Are you noticing your car insurance rate creep up even without tickets or claims? You're not alone. That's why there's Jerry, your proactive insurance assistant. Jerry handles the legwork by comparing quotes side by side from over 50 top insurers so you can confidently hit buy. No spam calls, no hidden fees. Jerry even tracks rates and alerts you when it's best to shop. Drivers who save with Jerry could save over $1,300 a year. Don't settle for higher rates. Download the Jerry app or visit jerry.ai/libsyn today. That's jerry.ai/libsyn.
Hey listeners, this is Peter and welcome back to the History Shorts. Today's episode is brought to you by the Podcast Republic, your ultimate listening app. Discover and subscribe to thousands of podcasts from around the world. Download Podcast Republic today, available on Google Play and the Apple App Store. Today on History Shorts, ask almost anyone to name the commander of American forces at the start of the Revolutionary War, and they will obviously say George Washington. But they are wrong. For 72 days, from the moment the first shots were fired at Lexington and Concord in April of 1775 until George Washington arrived in Cambridge to take command in July, the Continental Army had another commander-in-chief, a Massachusetts man, a veteran of the French and Indian War, a large, physically ailing, deeply serious man who held a collapsing military situation together through sheer force of will and organizational competence. Then he stepped aside without any complaint when Congress sent someone else to take his place. His name was Artemas Ward. He was the first ever commander-in-chief of what would become the United States Army. And outside of a handful of historians and the town of Shrewsbury, Massachusetts, almost no one remembers him. That is a shame. And today we are going to do something about it. Today's history brief returns to some strange history. A quick word from our sponsors.
I've got Dan Morgan here on the pod. Say hi, Dan.
Hey, how's it going today?
It's going good, man. Tell us who you are and what you do.
I'm Dan Morgan. I'm an attorney and a managing partner at Morgan & Morgan, which is America's largest injury law firm.
That's pretty awesome. I think I saw a billboard of yours recently that said 20 billion won. 20 billion is an insane number.
Yeah, 20 billion recovered. It's actually, I think, somewhere north, probably closer to 22, 23 after this year. And each year we get bigger and badder and our Army grows. So the number will hopefully keep getting bigger and bigger as time goes on.
Awesome. So how does someone get in contact with Morgan & Morgan? What would I do if I got into an accident?
Probably the easiest way is dialing pound law. That's pound 529 from your cell phone. We are always open. Our call center is always waiting to take your call. 24/7, 365.
Wow. Dan Morgan from Morgan & Morgan, America's largest injury law firm. Thanks for coming by the show.
Thanks for having me.
Visit forthepeople.com for an office near you.
This day in history. On March 28, 1979, a partial meltdown occurred at the 3 Mile Island nuclear power plant in Pennsylvania. Though the radiation release was limited, the incident shook public confidence in nuclear energy and reshaped debates about its safety. On March 28, 1939, Spanish dictator Francisco Franco captured Madrid, effectively ending the Spanish Civil War and beginning nearly 4 decades of authoritarian rule. Story of the day. Artemas Ward was born in 1727 in Shrewsbury, Massachusetts, a small town in Worcester County that would remain the anchor of his entire life. He was educated at Harvard, graduated in 1748, and then returned home to Shrewsbury to build the kind of life that colonial New England rewarded: land, commerce, civic responsibility, and accumulation of quiet authority through demonstrated competence and Puritan rectitude. He served in the French and Indian War, commissioned as a lieutenant colonel in the Massachusetts provincial forces, and then acquitted himself well enough that his military reputation survived the conflict intact. When he came home, he entered politics, the Massachusetts General Court, the Provincial Congress. And by the early 1770s, he was one of the more respected figures in the colony's patriot movement. Not a firebrand by any means, not a pamphleteer, a man known for judgment, for steadiness, for the kind of reliable gravity that causes communities to turn to someone when things go wrong. Well, and obviously things went wrong in April of 1775. The battles of Lexington and Concord on April 19th, 1775, were not, in the immediate aftermath, the opening salvos of a coordinated military campaign. They were more a chaotic, bloody confrontation between British regulars and colonial militias that sent shockwaves through Massachusetts and the surrounding colonies before anyone had a clear plan for what came next. What followed in the hours and days after Lexington and Concord was remarkable. Militiamen from across Massachusetts, Connecticut, New Hampshire, and Rhode Island began converging in Boston, responding to calls that spread through the region with extraordinary speed. Within days, somewhere between 15 and 20,000 colonial soldiers had assembled in a rough arc around the city, trapping the British garrison under General Thomas Gage inside Boston proper. This was, by any measure, an astonishing popular mobilization. It was also, militarily speaking, a chaos of competing authorities, overlapping jurisdictions, and almost no centralized command structure whatsoever. Into that chaos stepped Artemas Ward. The Massachusetts Provincial Congress appointed him commander of Massachusetts forces on April 20th, 1775, one day after Lexington and Concord. Within days, as forces from other colonies arrived, he became the de facto commander of all colonial forces around Boston, a position that he held by consensus rather than any formal authority, which made it both more impressive and considerably more difficult. The situation Ward inherited, to put it bluntly, was daunting. His army was not, in any conventional sense, an army at all. It was a collection of militia units accustomed to short-term service, commanded by officers whose authority derived from local elections rather than any military hierarchy, supplied inconsistently and deeply resistant to the kind of discipline that sustained military operations require. Ward had to maintain a siege of a well-fortified city garrisoned by professional British soldiers, without himself any adequate artillery, without a reliable supply chain, and without the formal congressional authorization that would eventually produce the Continental Army. He did it, not elegantly, not without friction, but he did it. Ward established his headquarters in Cambridge and began the work of organizing the improvised force around him into something that could sustain a prolonged siege. He coordinated with the commanders of forces from all other colonies. He managed the endless political complications of an army in which the Massachusetts men refused to take orders from Connecticut officers, and Connecticut men questioned the authority of Massachusetts commissions. He dealt with shortages of power, food, and equipment with a methodical persistence that the situation demanded and rarely rewarded. And then came Bunker Hill. On the night of June 16th, 1775, colonial forces under Ward's overall command moved to fortify the Charlestown Peninsula north of Boston, occupying Breed's Hill in a decision that was either a tactical adjustment or a navigational error, depending on which account you believe. The British response the following day was the Battle of Bunker Hill, 3 assaults up the hill by British regulars, 2 of them repulsed with devastating British casualties, the third succeeding only when the colonials ran out of ammunition and were forced to withdraw. Bunker Hill was technically a British victory. It did not feel like one, however, at the time. The British suffered over 1,000 casualties, nearly half of the force engaged. The colonial forces demonstrated to themselves and to the watching world that American militiamen could stand and fight against professional soldiers. Ward had not planned the engagement in detail, but it happened on his watch, under his overall command, and the fact that it did not become a catastrophe owed something to his steadiness in the hours that followed. George Washington arrived in Cambridge on July 3rd, 1775, bearing his commission from the Continental Congress as the new commander in chief. Ward met him there. What passed between them in any personal sense, the historical record does not tell us in detail. What it does tell us is that Ward stepped aside without the kind of resentment or political maneuvering that might have been expected from a man who had held the position Washington was now assuming. He accepted appointment as Washington's second in command, served in that role through the successful conclusion of the Siege of Boston in March of 1776, when Washington's placement of artillery on Dorchester Heights finally forced the British to evacuate the city. And then, citing deteriorating health, Ward resigned his commission in 1777. He returned to Shrewsbury. He served in the Continental Congress. He served in the Massachusetts legislature. He lived quietly and respectably until 1800, when he died at the age of 72 in the town where he had been born. He was never famous. He saw no monument, and he wrote no memoirs. He left behind no collection of quotable correspondence designed for posterity's consumption. He just did his job, and then went home. The question of why Artemas Ward disappeared from the popular memory of the revolution itself is not really a complicated one. History, particularly the history of founding moments, gravitates toward singular figures, toward Washington crossing the Delaware, toward Jefferson drafting the Declaration, toward Adams and Franklin and Hamilton filling the frame so completely that there's simply, no room left for the man who held things together in the days before the story found its heroes. Ward was not a hero in that theatrical sense. He was something rarer, and some ways more valuable, a competent, honest, selfless man who appeared at a moment of crisis, and, did what was required, and yielded gracefully when his moment had passed. I should mention that there is a statue of him in Washington, D.C. on Massachusetts Avenue, installed in 1938. Most people walk past it without any recognition. Most people could not tell you who he was. But now, all of you can. The History Brief. The following comes to us from Strange History by the editors of the Portable Press. Constantinople came under siege from the Arabs between 674 and 678, and might have fallen had it not been for the Byzantines' secret weapon, the Greek fire. Most likely invented by a Syrian engineer, though it may have been the result of generations of experimentation, we're not sure. The manufacturing process was kept a strict secret, and the recipe has been lost to history. Historians think the weapon was probably a kind of burning oil that was ejected into enemy ships, accompanied by smoke and thunderous noise. The liquid burned in water, and by some accounts was ignited by water itself. The really weird part, though, Greek fire couldn't be extinguished with water, so any ship that was doused with it would continue burning until, it was a floating pile of cinders. Greek fire could be put out only with sand, strong vinegar, or old urine. Thank you so much for spending some time with me today and helping make this little show such a mighty success. If you're enjoying this show and would like to help with its production, you can always donate a few dollars at buymeacoffee.com or become a Patreon member to enjoy these episodes ad-free. Both links can be found on our website at www.historyshortspodcast.com. Have a great rest of your day, and I will talk to you all again tomorrow.